Hello and welcome. This is Japan, and this is episode 2 of watching all of Lucha Underground. This episode was like right after, obviously, episode 1 but like I think like they filmed them like kind of a little bit apart. The only reason why I could tell is like it felt like they definitely like changed a lot of the aspect of like the overall go of it, which like normally that happens when you have like a pilot episode anyway, so it makes a lot of sense. But this episode, I feel like it feels in ways better than the first one, and in other ways, I think it's worse. So let's kind of just jump into it. We had obviously Johnny Mundo and Prince Puma had the main event last week, and they fought each other, and then got attacked by the crew afterwards with Big Rick. And so they obviously set it up for a tag match here. Johnny Mundo and Prince Puma versus the crew, which is Cortez and Mr. Cisco, I think is what they called him. This was actually a pretty decent tag match. I do think it was definitely one sided. Prince Puma and Johnny Mundo had pretty much the entire match just them doing whatever they wanted. The crew looked, obviously pretty weak, but they are kind of like a minion tag team. Big Rick was just kind of sitting there watching them up at the top, so wasn't anything too crazy with that. I think I'd put this in a solid B. It was a decent match. I really do. I think it does get a little bit lower on like Cage Match and whatever else I've seen about it. Because I always like to just kind of like have Cage Match up as a reference and you can kind of see and you're just like, I actually didn't really agree with that number, but this one kind of felt that way. I didn't think it was that bad. I definitely think it was definitely one sided. I think these two definitely had a way better match and held it together for this B rating. If you kind of just look at it as a whole, especially if you kind of look at the other team, then yeah, it probably would be rated a little bit lower. But I'm trying to just put it as a big overall, like, this is their first tag match, and I don't think it was that bad. Next up, we had a mixed tag match, which I was really excited for. Chavo Guerrero Jr. and Sexy Star versus Evilise and Son of Havoc. We saw three of these competitors last week as Evilise being the new person in. I do kind of remember from her AEW time. It's been a bit, so I think I'm not completely was like what she can do and not do. So we'll kind of go over every competitor. I think Chavo Guerrero was definitely the best one in here. He looked way better than his first match. I think I'd give him the highest rating marks. His tag partner, Sexy Star, wasn't bad, but she just kind of seemed like she can do like the leg scissor feint and just kind of some cross bodies. It didn't seem like she had much else in her wheelhouse. I don't know if that's just because of what the match entitled. It was only a 5 minute match, so she didn't really get a lot of time to do much, but it felt like there was definitely something, and she did get the pin on Son of Havoc, which was kind of, retribution from last week, which was kind of a nice touch. But I kind of just felt a little disconnected with her so far. I really can't tell if it's just because like I know that she's not a great worker outside of the ring, but I really just feel like so far from what I can tell and just sitting and watching that it's just not my thing. She's just not that type of wrestler for me so far. Again, maybe if she's in her own like 1v1 next time, I think maybe she'll be a little bit better, but at the moment I'd kind of put it a little bit down. I think I'd put this match in a C. I didn't even talk about their team. Evilise didn't have much time, and Son of Havoc really didn't do much either. They just kind of were there. I put them both in C. So I think with Chavo Guerrero's performance, I'd probably put a little bit higher, and that's what gave them the C and not the D. Then we had a couple of vignettes and stuff like that talking about the new person coming in. The one that's shown right now with his he has a manager too, which is always a cool touch. Because like I feel like with like luchadors sometimes they don't need to talk to be like that brooding figure. Just having the manager do the talking for him with Katarina is just absolutely perfect. This whole presentation in this match, I thought was pretty solid. I mean, he was kind of a squash match to a certain extent. It was only 4 minutes. He absolutely destroyed Blue Demon Jr. And they definitely could have done better with that. But I think I'd still put this as a solid C. I did like it over the tag match, but I overall, it wasn't. It definitely could have done some other stuff. Then after the match, Chavo Guerrero came down. It looked like he was going to save Blue Demon, who was getting attacked after the match by so it really seemed like he was gonna do that, but then he ended up using the chair on Blue Demon Jr. He took out some refs. He took out a bunch of rando wrestlers that tried to come in there and stop him. Then even Sexy Star came down because I guess she was trained or like at least knew the Blue Demon family. I don't know if Blue Demon Jr. in particular, but she definitely had some type of connection to him, and she was pleading for him, and then he took her out. I like this Guerrero so far character that he's doing. He's probably my favorite so far. I mean, obviously we're 2 episodes in, but out of character wise, I'm definitely vibing with Chavo Guerrero the most out of everybody here. Like I said, 2 episodes in, it's a little bit harder to tell sometimes, but so far I'm liking it. I put this up in a solid A. I'd probably put the whole show probably in the C range. I know the tag match I have a little bit higher, and the segment I have a little bit higher. They had some other stuff with Conan talking in the back. I really do like Conan's abilities with, Prince Puma, where Prince Puma doesn't have to say anything, and Conan's just talking about like, you shouldn't be friends with him. I don't know exactly those type of segments. They're so small that like you don't even necessarily need to put in the show, but they are pretty good spots. So I think overall the backstage stuff was good. This spacing in this episode was a little bit better. I do think they just need a little bit more time for the matches because we did have 2 over 5 minutes, but the main event was only 4:22, which most of it went into Chavo Guerrero attacking everybody. I'm fine with that, but a little bit longer main event probably would have worked out better because it just felt like a squash, and it kind of made it seem just kind of out of place when Blue Demon seems to have a little bit higher regard than everybody else. But yeah, so far I would put this in C. I definitely think episode 1 was better, which doesn't seem to be the case with which most people were thinking, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But I do feel like they have a really good character in this. God, this guy, the one that was in the main event, I completely lost how to pronounce his name, but I think he definitely seems like he's going to be a pretty big and decent character, and I'm really actually excited for it because he seems to be so far just kind of like that big bad guy, and I like the vibe that he's going. So this show, episode 2 wasn't too bad, and we'll be doing episode 3 very very soon. So if you guys like this stuff, just make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Like I said, the more interested people are in this series, I'll definitely be pumping them out more. I've been trying to film a couple of them, so I have a few to put up, but I do other reviews for all the current wrestling products and stuff. So if you like that, and videos on that, that's what goes up most of the time. But if you like this type of stuff, just make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.